All right. Welcome to another episode of the Close-Up Magic, part of the Orlando Magic HQ network. What's going on? I'm your host, Steven Cameron, and today we got a really fun show. We got my friend Steve Ceruti from The Ringer. He is like the man behind the scenes. He works with Ryan Russillo, Bill Simmons. When they want to talk Magic, they bring him on. You might have heard him on a lot of the soccer content with the Ringer Soccer show going on right now. But he joins me for a really fun conversation. We didn't really have anything planned. We just let's just hop on a call and just start talking about the Magic, their offseason, kind of like think a little bit about last year. Let's look a little bit about next year. We talk a little bit about like some media perspective stuff, given his role with the Ringer. It was a really fun conversation. Steve is a great guy. He lives up in Connecticut. He's not a local Magic fan, but he is a true Magic fan and knows more about this Magic team than quite a few people. So I think y'all are going to be really entertained with this conversation. It's really fun. It's really, really fun. Make sure you go give Steve a follow on Twitter. And but before we get into the conversation with Steve, I want to talk to you guys a little bit about what's been going on this summer with us, right? So with Orlando Magic HQ, we're still putting out content. If you're not tuning in, we are putting up constantly. We're uploading new custom stuff just for YouTube. We talk about, the recent drafted player in Tristan da Silva. We covered free agency super deeply. We're going to be covering Summer League. We got Brett James. He's been going, our senior reporter. He's been going to some of the Summer League practices and media sessions around on that in Orlando, which has been really great. So make sure you're tapping into that. We got Alan Anthony still doing the flagship Orlando Magic HQ show. We're pumping some stuff out, and we got some great plans for the future. So stay tuned into all things Orlando Magic HQ. And then before we get to the conversation, I just want to remind you all that we are part of the Believe Podcast Network, and this podcast is presented by Bet Online. Bet Online is your number one source for all sports betting needs this season, from baseball, golf, soccer, right, all up to top fights in the UFC and MMA and boxing. Bet Online is the place to be. Every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played are updated on Bet Online constantly, and it's very easy to read too. When the game's over, you head over to the online casinos, and you can even get in on a game of blackjack and poker and unwind with some of the slot machines they have. They have 150 slot games digitally that you can play on Bet Online. It's pretty neat if you enjoy gambling. Do it responsibly. Head over to the website today to get in on the action. Use promo code BLEAV. That's BLEAV. BLEAV for your 50% free bet credit on your first deposit up to $250. Bet Online, the game starts here. Cool. That just about touches all the pre-conversation topics. I'm not going to drag this on too long. Let's get into the conversation with Steve Ceruti. All right, Magic fans, like I told you, we got the Ringer's own Steve Ceruti. What's going on, Steve? Thanks for joining me today.
Absolutely. Good to be back. Exciting times. Franz extension. See what happens with Suggs. And we've been talking. There's been a lot of Magic articles on the Ringer recently. Michael Pina, who writes for us, has been a big Magic believer. So it's good to see.
Yeah, that article definitely made its way around the community the last couple of days. I enjoyed reading that. It was great. He also just did a segment with one of our partners, Brandon Kravitz, today, which was really cool. I'm looking forward to checking out that segment later. Steve, before we get too into it, I got a little bit of an icebreaker question for us. All right.
Okay.
In about 10 months, what are you and I going to be doing to celebrate the Orlando Magic champions of 2025? How do we celebrate?
See, I've been accused of being too patient of a fan. And so my expectations just like aren't like my expectations are high, but they're not that high. I do think there's a really good chance it's like, hey, this team, could they be the second best team in the East? Like I think everybody's talking about the Knicks, everybody's talking about the Sixers, and I don't really fully believe in either of those teams. So I do think there's a case to be like, hey, could they be in the Eastern Conference Finals? I'll take that next year in a heartbeat, no doubt about it. I'll take a playoff win. I'll take all that stuff. But if, listen, a title, a finals appearance, I'll take that too. But I'm not. Next year is like again a little baby steps. I'm not trying to let the cart get ahead of the horse a little bit too much.
You haven't started the celebration plans? Like I'm already looking at flights to Orlando to go to the parade. Might take a flight in between Orlando and California to Vegas to pop some champagne with Caldwell-Pope and some of the guys. I'm just
he knows
how.
He knows how.
He does. He knows how to celebrate. I'm like, I feel like I got to get ahead of this now. So flights and hotels are the cheapest they'll be before then. So,
well, the good news is
thoughts.
The good news is you could just transfer your hotels to, I mean, it's a vacation place too, right? So somebody will just take your hotel.
True.
If it doesn't, it's just like, it's an easy transferable thing. I'm thinking, give me 2 years, give me 2027 in that range. Really, everybody's kind of like hitting their prime. Maybe we get a point guard in here. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe Suggs takes that turn to be the main guy that can run the offense. But give me 2 years before I really get the excitement levels up. Next year, so everybody was like, this year, I remember we were talking before about like, I think the Magic's over-under was what, 37.5? And
yeah,
I felt
like that,
I felt pretty good about that. I was like, listen, would I take a 41-41 season? Yeah. And then I had some people being like, 40, like that's 500. What do you mean? Like, blah, 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 blah. Like they should be better than this. And there's so many other people who were like, oh, they need to sign somebody or just sort of speed up, I guess, the process a little bit. I'm patient, man. We were bad for 12 years. I'm going to just enjoy this team as it is. So I hope they can get there, but I'll take an Eastern Conference Finals series in a heartbeat. I think most Magic fans would as well. But hey, listen, if we can get to the finals, I'll take that too.
I got the 95 Eastern Conference Finals hat on.
You're ready to go.
So I'm primed. I'm ready to go. I mean, okay, to get a little bit more serious into it, before we dive into some of the other stuff, like I'm the same way. Like when you look at fandom right now and where we've been as a fan base and people who follow and cover this team, it's been a long 12 years. It's been a very long time. And last year, as a fan, was one of the most fun years we've ever had because expectations were very they were raised a little bit, but they weren't super high. We were like, let's just make the play-in at the beginning of the year. And then we adjusted midway through and let's just not be embarrassed in the playoffs. And then we pushed it to 7 and we saw Paulo be a superstar in the playoff and have, superstar moments in the playoffs. And, Franz had a couple moments within the series. Overall, I think he wished he performed better, but it was just so much fun to see this team succeed, have big wins versus really good teams, and have, areas that are clear that need to be improved. But it's like you change the DNA of the roster too much, and then all of a sudden expectations get higher for us as fans, and it's easier for us to get disappointed with different results. Like, hypothetically speaking, if we changed the plan and signed Paul George and we only make the second round, we as a fan base are going to be so upset. But right now, if we don't make this past the second round, we're still going to be thrilled and excited. So that's one way to think about being okay with not making a big splashy move this summer. I'm not sure exactly how you feel about all the moves we made yet. We'll get into that, but I was thinking about that a lot. It's only going to be harder as fans going forward because we're going to expect more from this team. Is that something you feel as well?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this, steady playoff team year in, year out, at least for the next couple years, feels like it's the low bar, which, is tough because it's still a young team. The East is, you never know. Like the East is still, we were going through it the other day. I mean, obviously Boston's on top. You got the Knicks, you've got the Sixers, you've got the Bucks who are still kind of lingering there. There's 4 teams that, I think we all think are pretty good and certainly have superstars on their team. And obviously we think we have one, and we do have one with Paulo. Then you've got a Pacers team that made the Eastern Conference Finals. I don't particularly love the team, and
right.
I'd rather be us than them, but they're still obviously in the mix. Then you talk about the Cavs, who we obviously lost to in the playoffs last year, who have a significantly better head coach, in my opinion, right now than they did last year. Pretty much. I mean, they have some parts that don't really fit together, But I think that's, maybe that'll get sorted out. I don't know how long Allen and I think, Mobley, I think will be there, but obviously you have Mitchell signs the extension. There's always rumors about him wanting to ask out, and then Garland's a guy that I've always been on the trade machine trying to figure out how we get him on the Magic. But that's another team again. So that's what I just named, like 6-7 teams. Like there actually are a good amount of teams in the Eastern Conference that you're gonna have to compete with. And who knows? Like maybe the Hawks have a bounce back year. I don't think so, but you never know. So like it is a little bit congested in there, but I do like them. I think our ceiling, probably below Boston. I don't think it's ridiculous to think because young teams typically still they play hard in the regular season, right? They care about the regular season. Like I don't know that the Bucks are going to care about the regular season next year. So is it ridiculous for us to potentially try to get a 2 seed? I mean, I think home court would be phenomenal. That'd be a phenomenal goal in the first round. We almost had it this year, which would have been pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, totally.
Considering. So I think that's the goal. And you're right. Like the expectations it's a double-edged sword because obviously like you want this, but it's like if the higher you reach, then the more I guess disappointed you're setting yourself up to be. But I don't know. Like I don't know. It would take a lot for me to be disappointed in them next year. Like even a first round exit, it depends on what it would look like. Who are we playing? What seed is it? How healthy are we? So like you just don't know. But yeah, like I think clearly we're trending upwards. But that's the thing too. And Priscilla and I always talk about this is whenever we talk about young teams or young players, we just assume that the graph is always going straight up and to the right, and it doesn't usually work that way. That's usually up and down and bumpy, and you hope it generally goes up, but it's not always just straight up on the same trajectory. So I'm excited. I'm optimistic as I've ever been. And but you just don't know. You don't know. So maybe the Knicks. Who knows? There could be an injury in the East too that helps us out or hurts us. So I think steady playoff team and then pushing for a top 4 seed is what next year's goal should be.
Yeah, I think I overall agree with that. Like I joked in the beginning about championship. I don't actually think that. I would love to just be like a really like we're in a playoff position the entire regular season. We get to fight for standings towards the end and be in that playoff race a bit. Yeah, and then like cool. Let's have an awesome first round. Ideally, it's a matchup that we do well in. We get to the second round, and that's a success, right? If for some reason we just have an awful matchup and we have some injuries going on, and we get out of the first round, or don't make it past the first round, that would be a bummer. But depending on the variables of the matchup and maybe what injuries the Magic might be dealing with, it might be a little easier to compartment. Can't say that word, but easier to deal with.
Compartmentalize. I know it's a tough one.
That's the word. Thank you. Yeah, it is a tough one. I'm in a heat wave over here too, so my brain's a little melty. Yeah, it's gonna be a fun season. I look at the offseason moves they made, and a lot of them make sense. They gave themselves a lot of flexibility. But before we go into specifics on that, going into the offseason, Steve, what were you kind of hoping and thinking was going to happen?
The Paul George thing for me was never I never really allowed myself to believe in it, even though the stars kind of did align with some of the moves they made. Obviously the Mo Wagner and I forget Fultz. There was a couple moves that they made that sort of opened it up and allowed it to be possible. And I remember just kind of tweeting out the open eyes emoji, but I never really allowed myself to truly believe that it was going to happen. Yeah. And honestly, Bill Simmons, he would roast me for this, but I kind of didn't really want it to happen deep down. I wouldn't have been mad about it because clearly it raises your ceiling. And I think he actually is a pretty good fit with the rest of the squad as that second, maybe third guy on a different night behind Paolo. But I have just enjoyed watching this young team get drafted together for whatever, trades, moves, and just all young guys kind of build and grow up together. So if you're going to go all in on a move, I just don't know that I think maybe there's no ideal fit. Nothing's perfect. There's no perfect fits typically. You just try to acquire talent and get better and improve the floor of your roster. So I get that, but I don't know. I would have been a little bit bummed out because I don't know. I think it would have taken away from Franz. I think it would have taken away from Suggs, and it would be interesting to see how it would have worked with Paolo, and it would have taken away from some of the guys that we've watched for so long that I still have hope and I'm still optimistic of the levels that they can reach. So I feel like next year is still kind of it's not like we're title or bust. Like, why not just
Right.
try to let these guys grow more? Like, we don't know how good some of these guys can be. So, and when you make that all in move, then the pressure's on everybody. Then it kind of changes how the fans feel, the front office feels, the players probably feel more pressure. So I'm cool with how everything went down. I like the KCP signing for sure. I mean, is it like the sexiest signing in the world? Of course not. Is he overpaid? Probably. Do I care? No, because he's a good fit on the team, and like he's
Yeah.
the guy. He's the kind of guy that you need. I mean, you could argue, okay, yeah, he didn't have a great shooting playoffs, and he certainly was the fifth option on a Denver team, now a title-winning Denver team. He certainly does disappear at times on offense, but like he's a veteran guy who can knock down big shots and plays excellent defense, and that's the MO of this team. So, I think overall it's a good fit. I don't really care what the money is, and it still allows us to be flexible going in the future. So I don't think the only thing I would have wanted to add, and I don't know exactly who that is. I mean, I know a lot of people have talked about Tyus Jones, but that just doesn't seem like what this front office's MO is. Like they don't
Yeah.
like small guards who can't defend. But is somebody who like a real true point guard. That's why I was like, would you kick the tires on Chris Paul before he signed with San Antonio as like a sort of like a 1-year guy to like elevate the IQ level of the rest of this team and the young guys and maybe run the second unit or even in crunch times when you need them, not relying so much on Franz and Paulo. I don't know who another guy out like that is out there. That's the only critique that I would have liked to add to the roster, but how could you not like it? I mean, the team is better than it was last year.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of that is like absolutely on point. And KCP, we look at how this team operated last year with Gary Harris, and yeah, there was definitely some times where we needed a table setter on the floor, or at least on the roster, like a second unit guy that could come in and kind of slow things down a little bit, and kind of let Paulo play a little bit more off ball. But it really sounds like everything the front office has been talking about is that like they trust Suggs to continue to grow as a playmaker. And it sounds like they really pushed someone like Anthony Black to grow as a playmaker this offseason, which, again, like right now it's even murky how he's going to fit into the rotation next year with, them bringing back
Anthony
Gary
Black.
Harris. But
I wanted him to play
like,
more last year.
Yeah. Oh, God, I would have loved to have seen him get some more run in the playoffs, too. Like, he didn't really get to play much down the end of the stretch as the team got healthy. But, I think they really just believe that one of those two guys is going to grow into that playmaker that will be good enough to allow Paulo to play a little bit more off ball. I think ultimately they're going to want Paulo to have the ball in his hands pretty regularly, but it's like you just need someone like 15% of the time that he like remove his usage a little bit, 15% like on ball to kind of alleviate that, let him go get up in the post and then get fed, things like that. I was never on Tyus Jones. I know Magic fans were like loving the idea of him, but to me, like the only way you go get Tyus Jones is if you move off Cole Anthony. And I look at those two players and I'm like, I don't know if I'm moving Cole Anthony just for Tyus Jones. Like that Cole Anthony didn't have the greatest season last year, and he might just be who he is. He might just be an up and down streaky 6-man player. But at the same point, he like is so important to this team's chemistry and locker room. And, he does play hard. And I'm just like, I don't know if they're ready to give that up for a guy like Tyus Jones, who probably doesn't want to come off the bench and probably wants double what Jalen Suggs or Cole Anthony is making. And like, I just don't know if I like ever got behind that. Plus he's small and, doesn't defend very good, as much as people want to try and sell me that he does defend. Like he's like 6 foot.
No, I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm with you. Cole had a good start to the year, and then, it just, I don't know, it just didn't click for the second half and even into the playoffs a little bit. I don't think it's impossible that he could still be like a really good spark plug off the bench and be like a reliable, like playoff caliber scorer at some point. Yeah, he's small, but if you need him to just like carry you for a quarter in a playoff game, like I don't think, not carry you, but like at least give you like a good spark. I don't think the door is closed on that for me at all. So and then it just gets back to like, if it's not a clear upgrade, why are we screwing with the vibes of the team? And that's kind of how I felt about really anything. And that's the cool thing about the KCP signing, is it doesn't really screw anything up. I know there was like a lot of disagreements or debates about like how valuable Gary Harris was last year. I was not anti Gary Harris, but I the playoffs to me, like, you got to hit shots, man. Like, you got to knock down, and he had so many open shots. And like, I know the defense was there. I'm not saying he doesn't play good defense. He does, but that's, can we just get rounded out a little bit more? Can we not, like, that's the difference in a series if Gary Harris potentially makes some shots. So I don't know. If it's, clearly to me, KCP is a clear upgrade over him, and it's cool that we kept Gary. Who knows? Like, maybe he's trade bait in the middle of the season. I don't know. It seems like there's a lot of guys on the roster that could potentially be tradable assets, but like, KCP is just a straight up upgrade over our two guard last year. And all right, cool. There you go. Done and done. And the rest and everybody's role is still kind of the same.
Yeah, it's really fun because we did see plenty of regular season success with Gary Harris next to Jalen Suggs. Obviously on the defensive side it worked, and then there were some nights where they were both hitting shots, and it was really great. But I feel like when you look at someone like Gary Harris and you look at someone like KCP, it's Gary Harris will have like one game where, like, one or two games where he's hitting 45% from three. And then I'll have like 4 games where he's hitting like 30% from three. Where it's just like the shooting is just like, when it's good, it's great. But when it's not good, it's awful. And I'm not saying Caldwell-Pope's never going to have a bad shooting night, but like, you're probably not going to have a long stretch of bad shooting nights, where we were hammering our fists into walls like a week or two at a time with like, dude, Gary, hit a shot. It's been like 2 weeks now. What's going on? Where it's like, Pope will have ups and downs, but they're not going to be like big up and downs like we saw with Gary Harris. And then you think, okay, this team needed shooting, right? So they got a more consistent shooter who will hit bigger shots. We've known it. We've seen it with Pope. And then they take their starting shooting guard and move him to the bench. It's just like, oh, interesting. So just more connectivity, more depth, because they're both really good shooters. They're both good shooters. They have different levels of consistency within their shooting, but they're both shooters. And it's just like, okay, the team they didn't address the shooting with like a high volume Klay Thompson, Buddy Hield, Gary Trent Jr. Those guys all take like 8-9 attempts per game. But they just added more consistency within guys in those roles, which is really nice. Like, you think about Joe Ingles, who was a 41% shooter last year for the Magic, but he only took 1 a game. Cool. You're kind of taking that guy out and you're putting in Gary Harris, who's going to take at least 4. And I can confidently say that's roughly the number, because Gary was never a guy playing big starter minutes. He was never pushing like 35 minutes a game. He was always kind of closer to a high end bench players minutes rotation in that like 28 minutes per game, roughly around there. And I just think like we're just adding more depth with the shooting in that capacity. And then, the draft, like they drafted Tristan da Silva, who's like a 38% 3-point shooter in college the last couple of years, another big body who in theory should be able to hit shots when he's in the game. Obviously we need to see it translate, but in theory, like, they have started to address the shooting. I don't know if it's enough to make us a top 10 shooting team in the league. I really don't think so, unless like Franz takes a huge step, which we all hope he does. But like, they could probably be at least league average now to an extent.
I'd take league average. Yeah, listen, because with the defense that some of these guys play collectively, league average that puts you into a whole different level of team. I mean, if you're a top 5 defense and a league average shooting team and our league average offensive team, like, that's pretty damn good. Especially come playoff time when, like, defense obviously ratchets up and it's it's just kind of a different level of basketball. So I'm with you there. I mean, the interesting thing too about Gary Harris coming off the bench is, he's obviously going to be playing more against second unit guys too. So like, you'd imagine that his productivity would be better as well. I don't know. I'm interested in, like, I'd be interested to know like what you think about. We talked about Anthony Black. I mean, Jet Howard's obviously out there as well. Like, I'm just a little more optimistic of like, get those guys some playing time in the regular season. Like, would I actually rather see some of those guys playing more minutes than Gary Harris, because like in the long run that will be better. I don't know who. Like, it's one of those things where like, the Magic drafted Jet Howard. Like, of course, they're only going to say good things about him. And like, so I don't know, who knows, but like, we have only heard like, oh wow, like the Magic really like him and they think he's going to be good. And the last year in the G League like did him some good because he kind of figured some things out and was able to play consistently, which he wouldn't have obviously if he was at the NBA level. I'd just like to see what we have in him, and I think a lot of Magic fans would, and like I know what we have in Gary Harris.
Right.
Are we willing to take the gamble of saying, hey, we might not win as many games this year, but for the long run, we might be better if we actually give Jet some minutes, or Jet or Anthony some more minutes, because that's the future of, at least hopefully, the future of what our team looks like.
I look at Gary Harris and I do, yeah. I mean, he is a blocker in a sense in the rotation to those younger guys. But I also look at Gary Harris, who's probably going to miss 25 games. They're probably going to have to load manage him. And, if Anthony Black takes a step in his shooting, defensively, he's already probably as good, if not better, than Gary Harris. I'll say he's better than Gary Harris as a defender. He's got bigger size.
He's a better shooter than I thought he was going to be, too.
Super low volume last year was like one a shot per game, but like, he was hitting them at like, I think he ended the season like 38% or something like that, which was really nice. If he ends up, confidently nailing shots in practice and training camp, when he does get called up to play, starts hitting shots, getting more aggressive on and off ball. I don't think Gary is going to be a complete, like, he's not a player that's going to, like, the management is going to say like, no, you can't outbeat him. Like, I think they will allow the young players to outbeat him, but I think they're going to make the young players earn it and like kind of prove it when they do get an opportunity.
Yeah, that's
like,
fair.
They probably start Gary at the start of the season, but like, I wouldn't be surprised if by Christmas time, like he's kind of being somewhat in and out of the rotation because Anthony Black is just stepping in and when his number's called, like doing well. I do feel for Jet Black, Jet Howard, like he could, I think he could be good in theory, but it's like, how is he going to get on the floor? I even wonder a little bit where Tristan da Silva gets minutes, and he's, he's 30 or 23, pretty experienced college player, should be like pretty NBA ready. I think da Silva probably takes Joe Ingles minutes. Gary probably takes Markelle Fultz minutes, and then you just kind of got to like figure some things out. I guess the one silver lining, Steve, is like coach likes to play an 11-man rotation pretty darn long into the season, so we'll probably see a decent a bit of that kind of stuff going on. J.I. will miss some time from here and there, so that'll like cause some things to, some rotation decisions. They could go kind of small in the second unit with running like Mo at the 5, Tristan da Silva at the 4, little things like that. So it'll be interesting. What did you think about bringing back guys like Mo Wagner and I think Goga? Kind of like, I don't think it was super shocking, but I also think a lot of us were expecting he'd get poached from another team potentially, or maybe even go overseas. What were your thoughts around bringing those two back on the pretty team friendly contracts?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like Mo, we needed to bring him back. I mean, unless you were going to go out and sign somebody who was going to take up his salary or his role. But I think most Magic fans, like, he's a valuable bench guy. I mean, he was like a literal game changer at times on offense when he would come in.
Totally.
With his energy and his scoring and his rebounding. So, and obviously, his brother plays on the team. Like, there's just, again, it's another one of those, like, don't screw with the good vibes things. Yeah. I think he's such a fan favorite, and it's not just like a fake thing. Like, he actually brings value to the team, that I think it's a no-brainer. And then with Goga, I didn't really care really one way or the other, I feel like. But the fact that he's back, I'm not mad about it. I'm happy. And, what is it? Where the Magic are essentially paying their 3 centers what OKC is paying for Hartenstein alone. So I like that. That's great. I mean, I would have been interested in Hartenstein depending on what the situation was, but I love Mo. I think he's just like a kind of guy who you need like kind of crazy guys on your team, a couple of them, and he's crazy. Like, he'll just kind of fight anybody at any given time, or he's not afraid to beat his chest after he gets 2 rebounds and a layup in a row and just get in somebody's face and kind of change the emotions of a game. Because Franz isn't really that way. Right, which is obviously funny because it's his brother.
Right.
Jalen is that way. Paulo, I don't think is that. He's not Franz low level like excitement, but he's not. I don't know. He's just not like a beat your chest like kind of thing. He's like more, I'm going to let my play do the talking. I think you need guys like that are a little bit wild cards on the team, and I love him. And so I was very happy with that for sure. So especially because they're contracts that also, I mean, you hate to say this, but like obviously they're contracts that could be traded, and if there's somebody who like a Darius Garland, or I don't know, name the name, who's out there, and we anybody other than OKC, we probably have the assets to make a deal or to get a deal done. Although San Antonio's got a lot now too as well. Maybe not exactly in the young player department, but at least in the draft picks department. But you feel like if somebody pops up like that's available, we have the salaries and the picks and the current young players to potentially make a move. So from all levels, I mean, it was a no-brainer to me.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings about Mo. I mean,
really,
he does bring a lot of intangibles. Yeah, I mean, he brings a lot of intangibles, and you always do need a guy who's going to give it 100% on both ends of the floor, even if he's not always effective on both ends on the floor. I don't think he's a particularly good defender, and I know a lot of people. Yeah, he's just kind of he's not very good. People love his charges, and they're fun to watch, but like that's kind of all he's got. He's okay. But
he's more for like the energy and the rebounding, and like he does in like 5-minute stints can like really change a game. And I as a I think a lot of fans of or a lot of fans who are not Magic fans that watch Magic games, they're like, "Well, Mo is awesome," and you're like, "Yeah, like he's got his flaws, but like I think they're, I think he provides something that is not always easy to come by, right?" And
totally.
So to bring him back, to me, I don't know. Like, he's not a perfect player by any means. He's not. I don't think he is a good defender at all. But you're also not really asking him to do that. Like he's totally. Back up big. Like he has his role, and he's going to play in certain games and series, and he's not going to play in others. And there's a reason for that. So that's why I'm just like, for the money it was 2 years. It's the second year of team option too. I think, right?
Yeah,
so like,
totally.
No harm, no foul here.
I'm definitely not upset about bringing him back, and I'm definitely not upset at the contract. The front office did an amazing job giving them a lot of flexibility with these role players. Gary Harris and Mo both have team options. I think the third year on Goga is a team option. He's guaranteed, I think, for the next 2, though. But I think with me, like specifically with Mo, yes, you need to bring him back for chemistry. You need to bring him back for on-court energy and just kind of those like intangibles we've been talking about. But offensively last year, he actually was pretty darn good. And we saw him kind of become this more consistent finisher at the basket, just more consistent in general with a lot of his offensive skills. But I really, truly believe a lot of that was connected to Joe Ingles being a connector with him. A lot of Mo's buckets were made because Joe was just finding him, like feeding him into the right cut, creating like basically you would see him certain nights, like literally tell Mo where he wants him to go, and he goes there, he gives him the ball, and he makes the shot or makes the drive or something like that. And so I'm hoping that whoever fills into that like Joe Ingles ball handler role for the second unit can also continue to find that connectivity with Mo, because if not, then he's going to go back to that player he was before Joe, which was a very inconsistent offensive player as far as scoring goes. But he's also that guy you can bring him in for 5 minutes and he'll put up 10 points because he just goes hard every time. So I'm not mad at it. I'm just one of those guys that's like, I don't love Mo, but I see his value to the team. And like, I probably wish he was the third string center and not the second, but that's okay. Yeah.
That's
and
fair.
Like the contract's great. The contract's great, obviously. Give him a bonus. Like he's probably not worth the annual money if it was like 4 years, but like it doesn't matter. We had to spend the money, and it's team controlled, and like you said, a tradable contract. If
it's harder to find centers
Wagner,
though, in the league than you would think it is, or
it
than
is.
It used to be. So
Good
like
ones,
the fact
least.
that we have 3 like decent centers is, I don't think a lot of teams have like one decent center. I mean, what New Orleans has no centers, so like I don't know, and obviously OKC spent what they spent on Hartenstein because they desperately needed that to
the
pair
Knicks
somebody
are crying
with
that we re-signed Goga. Knicks fans
so
really wanted him.
Yeah, I don't blame him. I mean, because Mitchell Robinson gets hurt all the time. So although his Instagram account claims that he didn't, but I don't know, the numbers tell differently. So yeah, like the fact that we've got 3 like playable centers is pretty, I don't know, kind of rare in the NBA. It feels like.
Did you pay attention to the draft at all? Were you like diving into it and like researching players, or did you do what I did and literally research the guy we drafted the day we drafted him?
I didn't go deep enough to like know a ton about De Silva. I did get several texts from people who were like, "I like this guy," right after the draft. So I'm like, okay, that's cool. Like that's great. And
Yeah.
he fit the Magic's like bad background and like body type. So the only thing that was different is like he actually could shoot. We finally drafted a guy who's long and lanky who actually shoots a decent 3-point percentage. I'm kind of with you. I don't have any idea what his role is going to be because I just don't. There's just too many. We have too many guys. We just have too many players. He's one of the guys where like if he went to, I hate to say this, but like you go to the Heat, he'd probably play right away and play well. I don't know what he would look like for us. I don't know what he's going to look like for us. I don't know if we even need him to play. I guess time will tell. He'll be competing, I guess, with a few guys for whatever minutes he is. As you said, 23. So hopefully he's like on the more finished product end, and it's kind of like what you get when you put him in. So, but as far as the overall draft, I mean, I really liked Cole Connect. I mean, I think everybody kind of did, and when he slipped. I'm almost like happy that he was drafted right before us because I don't think we would have taken him because it's just again it's not who the Magic are as a front office and an organization. So maybe that like made it easier that like we weren't even, if we had passed on him and he was still there, like I think I'd be pissed. But he got drafted before. I mean, he and McCain, like I both those guys that you like because they're shooters and obviously them because they played in the tournament and obviously one playing for Duke and one playing for Tennessee. So in a way, it was like kind of good that they got drafted before us because then it's like, all right, I have no expectations for this pick. Nobody that I really, really want is even on the board. So that's kind of how I felt. I mean, as far as like the top of the draft, I don't know. Like I'm from Connecticut. I live I live in the same town as Dan Hurley does. I live very close to where Donovan Clingan grew up. My wife went to UConn. I did not. So like I knew the UConn kids like pretty well. Yeah, I knew there was no way we were getting either of them, so it didn't really matter. But I do like Clingan. Although it's kind of a weird fit, I feel like in Portland they already have 2 Ayton who I don't really like, and Rob Williams is always hurt, so maybe he will play way more and probably should. And then Castle, I think, is a very it's a perfect setup for the Spurs. Like I think he's an excellent player. But again, we were never getting any of these guys. So though like Dillingham was another guy. Like it was mostly just like the big name guys at the top of the draft. I didn't. Once we got to like our pick, I didn't really know I hadn't really watched most of the guys that were there.
I kind of took the season off for preparing for the draft. I like was gonna have one draft expert on, but we had a hard time like connecting schedule wise. It just didn't work out. I listened to some of the episodes from some of the other content creators that are doing draft stuff. Some of the stuff you guys do with Kyle.
And KOC.
KOC, Kevin O'Connor and Kyle Mann.
They do a great job.
So I got to listen to some of that stuff. Yeah, they do. They do a great job. But I just in general was less interested this year just because like, we got pick 18.
Boring draft.
Like, yeah.
Well, it was a boring draft too.
That too. Yeah. Not a lot of high end, like big names. And so I just kind of like checked out. Like I knew a couple of names. I knew of De Silva, but I couldn't exactly say like I knew much about him. But I knew he was like from what I'd listened to, like Philip Rossman, like on Locked On Magic. He brought his name up a lot. And I was like, yeah, if he likes him, he's probably a decent fit. And so yeah, I was like pretty psyched once I read up on him. I'm like, cool, 6'8" guy, can defend. Not super explosive, but has some offensive ability to score a little bit. Definitely can shoot. Like makes smart passes, high IQ. So I'm like, checks a lot of boxes for this front office: size, IQ, and the ability to defend and shoot. They actually grabbed a shooter, so can't really complain too much. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he fits into the rotation. I guess like if you're going Cole, Gary at the 1 and 2, and then you have J.I. and Mo, in the big spots, that kind of leaves like the 3 open. And I guess it's like a toss up. Like, does Anthony Black get it? Does De Silva get it? Does Jed Howard somehow get it? Like, I'm not really sure who kind of fills that backup 3 spot unless I'm just like not thinking of someone. Maybe I'm forgetting someone. But yeah, I guess there's some like opportunity there and like that, like kind of like small forward role for some of these guys to like fight for minutes there. With the departure of Fultz. Like, I mean, technically the Magic have 14 spots. There's one open roster and a bunch of two-way spots available. Fultz is a very polarizing name for Magic fans and the Magic community and just like, the NBA community in general. He was a very beloved player here, a very beloved teammate. He very hard worker. Like, there's really, outside of like some on-court stuff, like there's really not a whole lot of negatives you can say about him as a person and as a player. We wish he was healthier. But were you surprised that, it's pretty clear in my opinion they're not bringing him back. Are you surprised that that is how things happened?
A little bit, but I almost wonder, like 2 years ago, what was it, 2 years ago when it was when the like people I think first started like kind of noticing that the Magic were all right and had some talent. It was like even probably it was pre-Paulo. Like Fultz was a very important player for this team.
Yeah,
like,
he was.
There was he missed a bunch of time in one of the seasons, and like there was like night and it was a season we started like 5-20, right? And we didn't have Fultz.
Yeah. Paulo's rookie year.
Yeah. So it was terrible. And then Fultz comes into the mix and just kind of like stabilizes the team, because you're asking Paulo, a rookie, and Franz, a second-year team player, to like run the offense, and it's like that's going to be a disaster. As soon as Fultz comes back, you're like, oh, like this looks like an actual team now, and they play well, and everybody has their roles. And so I was like, okay, is this a thing, or is this just like a 1 year kind of, all right, this is what the team needed in this year? Like he's kind of nothing more than, for at least a building piece for the future. And I think that's kind of how it turned out. Like I don't think he really mattered and would have mattered bringing him back this year. Like we talk about the need for a point guard, but I just don't think it's the kind of guy like Fultz. Like you need somebody who's going to make shots if you're going to have, the certain team setup that you have. And he just doesn't do that. I was extremely happy for him. I always liked watching him. As you said, he played hard, like seemed like a really good dude. I also wonder, like, I don't know if I'd heard some rumors about him in an injury situation, just like not really being fully healthy, and like if that was going to be like a career problem as well. And I think, we've just seen it. Like he's had a lot of things in his career health wise, and obviously early on, and even his time with the Magic and this past year. So I think taking all that in consideration, like it's another situation where I'd rather just give those minutes to a younger guy than
for sure.
Maybe win a couple more games if we have a guy like Fultz in there, but you're going to be better for the long term if you just kind of see what you have in the couple young guys that I think I'd like to see play more, even if they're going to make mistakes out there.
Yeah, I agree with that a lot. I personally have nothing against him as a player. I've just questioned the on-court fit with the lack of shooting and his health issues for quite a few years now. And I'm like, yeah, it's not a happy ending with him, and that sucks. And that's what I think is the bummer here. Like, it's not like he went out like killing it. He did okay in the playoffs. He had some good moments. But I think a lot of us wish it was like a little bit more of a happier ending there.
Totally.
And like to see him like he's still a free agent, and it's like, well, that kind of sucks. He's like, I don't know. I just feel like the story is it wasn't the ending a lot of us wanted. But I think he had his time and his place, and the Magic gave him every opportunity to get healthy, and they worked with him so much and with patience and stuff like that, and it was a good trade for him.
That trade, I mean, it was a no-brainer. The Magic clearly won that with the Sixers trade, and it was cool that he was able to sort of like become a solid NBA player again.
Totally.
After people were like, "This guy's done," like he's worth nothing, and the Magic I think it was a perfect marriage for each other when it happened. And to me, it just doesn't make any sense anymore, unfortunately. And I think he'll get picked up by somebody. I mean, Milwaukee, who knows, like they need guys. Like there's plenty, like, I mean, even, I don't know, the Suns. I feel like there's so many rosters that like our roster, OKC, New Orleans, where they have like a million players that I feel like are like NBA ready players are good. And then there's the teams like the Suns and the Sixers and a few others and Milwaukee even that like have like a couple really good players and then like nothing else. So I assume he'll get picked up somewhere. He'll get a look, and if he could play, he could play. So but I just don't think it made any sense for us anymore.
Yeah, I agree with that. Steve, so I want to talk a little bit like less specific about the team for a moment and take a media perspective on it. You and I both work in media to an extent. I cover the team on a local level with the Orlando Magic HQ. You're a senior producer person. I don't know your
Close
exact
enough, yeah.
title off my
It
my
doesn't
head.
even matter. Yeah.
I forgot your title shortly after you told me, but like you're deep into the ringer and all that
we
stuff.
We do content,
and
yeah.
You see it from like a little bit more of a national perspective in some aspects. And, we have seen the Magic get a little bit more conversation, like be involved in the conversations. They've, from the content you guys have been doing, literally we just mentioned at the start of the show, the really nice article that Michael Pina put out yesterday morning. But like, how do you think the Magic are going to be viewed on the bigger stage and like respect it? Like, we're always going to, the fan base is going to have that underdog mentality and it's never going to be enough. But like, what are you kind of expecting from that standpoint with the Magic's reputation, what they did last year? Like, what are you expecting, more national games, or do you think they'll get more
bare
TNT
minimum,
stuff? Yeah. Like just talk me through some of your thoughts with the Magic regarding like the national media and the bigger stage, like spotlights.
I think last year went a long way in just like legitimizing a lot of the things that people like myself and you and whoever were saying about, some of the guys on this team. Like, hey, this seems like pretty good. We've got some talent. I remember saying, I forget if it was on Bill's pod. I said, I don't even know why we were talking about this, but I said that I thought like Jonathan Isaac could potentially be a defensive player of the year candidate. This was before last year. And the amount of people that are like, you are such an idiot, dude. Like that guy can't even stay on the court. Like he's not that good. What are you talking about? And I don't know. Like, I've certainly got many takes wrong too, but like, it's good to like, all right, yeah, I was right. The guy's freaking awesome. Like and Bill, obviously I do pods with him and I'm around him a lot, and he started to like watch a lot more Magic games. And he was like, this guy's like the reincarnation of Bill Russell. Like you were right, and it's like, it's just kind of, it's cool to see like national guys have the same opinions of things that we have been seeing for a long time. Cause I'm not one of those guys who goes around and blames the national media or just like your average league pass NBA fan for not watching the Magic. We weren't that interesting for like a long time. So like when it's like, oh dude, you don't even watch our games. It's like, yeah, of course not. We stink. Like, why would you watch, I wouldn't want to watch our games sometimes if I was, unless I had to. And that's kind of what it was like for like the last decade or so. But it is cool. And the best thing that happened to this team was, I tell people like, remember like it was a year or two after Isaac got drafted in the team. I think they had made the play. It was one of the years they had made the playoffs, and you're like, Isaac is like our future. Like, right. He's the franchise player. If he could just do this. And to think of where that was and how depressing that seems now that we actually have like several franchise cornerstones and Isaac can just be this like jack of all trades, Bill Russell clone. Like it's just really cool. And I think a lot of people who like the NBA, who are fans or covered or whatever, like they saw the Magic this last season, like that team, like, yeah, they're flawed and whatever. And their offense is kind of clunky at times, but man, like those guys are cool and they all like each other and they play really hard. And that's why it was like one of it was the most enjoyable season since the finals run season in 2009. So like, I do like it. I mean, I get the thing is I'm in a weird spot because I'm not looking for like sympathy or anything, but like I feel like I'm a very level-headed fan. Like I don't really dip into like I don't get too dramatic or the hyperbole or whatever. And like I look at the team and I will call out flaws or like be concerned about things openly. I'm not just like a blind fan who only thinks that good things are going to happen or that our team is the best or our player is the most valuable. So I remember there's a lot of Magic accounts that didn't like me or just like whatever because I wasn't like raw enough when I talk on Bill and Ryan's podcast about like Franz or whatever, or like the future of the team, or like legitimate concerns that I have about roster construction. So it is a little bit weird for me sometimes to like, because I don't like when people are like, I'm not the only person whose opinion on the Magic matters. Like it shouldn't be. Like there's plenty of people who do that, but sometimes because I'm talking on Bill's pod or Ryan's pod, they just think that's what Magic fans think, and that's not always true. But I also am not going to just say like, hey, shut up. Like don't be concerned about Franz and his shooting percentage. Like I'm concerned. Like why would I not be concerned? I think it's going to be okay. I think he'll figure it out. But I don't know. Like I think it's a very weird place to be following this team that kind of has come out of nowhere a little bit, and it's almost like the WNBA in a little bit, where like Caitlin Clark goes into the league and all of a sudden they get way more eyeballs and people like don't like the way that they're talking about it. It's kind of, the Magic are kind of the same way because they're like, well, I've been watching this team when they were bad for 10 years. Like, I have more of a right to think this way than you do. And that's not necessarily true. So I get it. Like it can be a little annoying when like media members or fans hop on your team's bandwagon and they don't watch or know as much as you do. But I don't know. To me, that's a good thing. That means your team's good and relevant. And again, to your point, like hopefully we get some more national television games and you're in front of fans' eyes more often so they can actually see. But I don't know if I trust the guys nationally who I know watch games. Like Pina watches games, man. Like he knows that this is like, he's not just like writing. He's not doing first take where he's just like looking for a good segment. He truly believes this stuff. And same thing with like, our guys like KOC and J. Kyle Mann and Rosillo and Bill, like all those guys like watch the Magic and genuinely enjoyed watching them. And I think that's a great sign for things to come,
Yeah. I feel like I'm similar to you. Like, I feel like I can like be level headed with my opinions on the team. Granted, like I just bashed a lot of people's favorite player on the Magic and Mo Wagner. So
yeah,
like,
that's controversial.
If I can say that, like, yeah, I'll get hate for it. I do it pretty regularly. I've got
it's okay though.
Over the years for not liking Fultz on the roster and stuff like that.
I just don't like the fan. Like, I don't know, maybe guys are gonna get mad about this, but like the fans that like think that the team and the players can never do anything wrong is like, what are you like? I know that's fanaticism, right? That's you're being a true fan, but
sure,
I don't know. Like you have to look at it with a critical and realistic eye. Like if you see something that you don't think is right or you have questions about, it's okay to still love the Magic and not really be sure about something that's happening or a player that's playing.
Yeah, the fan base, and it's understandable, has a very strong like grip around the emotions around this team, which every fan base does. But I think like even more so for the Magic to an extent, because like they were so irrelevant for the longest time. And it's like, oh, they're good. Like, pay attention, notice us, please notice us.
But only say good things.
But only say good things. Don't let the first thing you say out of your mouth be something bad. Like, and that's just not how it works. Like I work in media outside of this, like this show that I do as well, in a different aspect of the world, but it's just like that's just not how things work. Like you got to like earn some legitimacy, which they did last year. They really did. Like the little 500 run they had the year before Paulo's rookie year, like that wasn't really enough. Now, yes, should Paulo probably have had a national televised game before? Like he probably should have had one or two more, because he won Rookie of the Year prior, like giving us one or two of those like Wemby games or something like that. Like that would have been a little nice. But
well, historically, number one picks, like they get national TV games, no matter how bad the team is. Like and it was an outlier that he did not get that. So that I think that's a fair gripe to me.
He was like one of the most underhyped like first round picks in a very outside of maybe this draft class in a really long time, which is really weird. Like I think everyone just like kind of like hugged onto the Chet story because he's, everyone loves a really, really skinny, tall dude who can shoot the ball from three. Like let's not kid ourselves. We saw it with Chet, we saw it with Wemby, we've seen it with a lot. We saw it with Kristaps Porzingis.
Yeah, you like the
that's
unicorn
where the
yeah.
unicorn, right? And so. Like, I kind of get why he became under the shadows, but it's like, oh, you would have expected we would have gotten maybe a couple more games last year with him winning Rookie of the Year, maybe flexed into another spot or two once he became an all-star. So that was disappointing. And, like, hopefully, like, I expect a good amount more next year. I don't know if we're going to, like, crack the 10 mark, but, like, should they get 7 or 8 games? Probably. Like, that seems like a good number. Like 4 or 5 of those on NBA, like on TNT and ESPN, and the other ones on, some of the other streaming services that are going to be provided or whatever.
Like Shaq kind of jumped on the bandwagon after he got his jersey retired. He started talking about it more on TNT, and
Dwight jumped back on the bandwagon after coming to that play-in game, sort of. Not that Dwight, he means anything.
Even Barkley just talking about how hard they play. And then I think, a lot of like the nerd media guys like kind of latched on and were like, oh, like this, this team like defensively is insane. Like Suggs is, it's just like, that was one of the things too, is I think one of the most fun parts of the Magic team was just watching Jalen Suggs play hard every
He
night.
was so fun.
You know, like,
yeah, he was so good
and
to
you know,
watch
I have
last
so
year.
many people who like, you know, watch or cover league or whatever, just hitting me up being like, dude, Suggs is such a fun guy to watch. And he, like, you know, the offense is whatever. And his offense obviously improved last year again, which is great. But it's just like, there's that Toronto game, which I always remember, where I think it was like right at the beginning, he had like a steal and then like he saves the ball and then it gets passed up to Franz, hits a three, and he's pumping up the crowd. It's a timeout. It was like literally like 3 minutes into the game, I think, or something. And you're like, dude, this guy is so pumped to just like be playing basketball. And that's what watching the Magic were like. They're like, they and you can see like the halftime interviews, like they're all clowning at each other or whatever, like, or they post game interviews with Dante and all those guys. Like they clearly just like, there's such a great vibe around this team, and they're young. You know, and I think, you know, fans get carried away because then you're like, oh, like our young core is just as good as OKC, and you're like, well, I could be realistic and say it's probably not. OKC was the 1 seed in the West this year. Like,
MVP
you know, they might
candidate.
doesn't mean it can't be better, but yeah, like I you know, I think the good news is it's a really likable team, and Apollo is like a top 10, 15-ish player, which I think he's capable of being in the next few years. Like all that media stuff, that'll take care of itself. If anything, it's going to be like the expectations are going to go through the roof, and then it's going to be like, hey, lay off our guy because he hasn't won enough yet. You know, that's sometimes becomes the concern. So I think the team's in a great spot. You know, I think obviously, I know nobody wants to hear this. I'm not from Orlando, so like I don't mean to be rude or anything, but like it's just like it's one of the markets that's just tough. It's a tough sell, you know, like it's totally. Even though I think we have great fans and we have great fan support. The arena is awesome when especially last year when things are going well. It's just, you know, it's for the league to like not put the Magic on national TV. It's not a hard choice for them. You know, it's not even like, you know, it's not like the Lakers or the Celtics or whatever. Like, it's not even really the middle ground, like the Sixers or whoever. Right. Like, we have to prove to the rest of the league that we are worthy of that, which is unfair, but it is the way it is.
Yeah, and like that's okay. It can be okay, you know, because as they, you know, I have a friend, Philip Rossman, like I'll shout him out again. He says this all the time. He's the host of Locked On Magic and Orlando Magic Daily editor. He says this everything all the time. Winning cures everything. The more we win, the more relevant the team's going to be in every spotlight. So like, last year, the team won, right? Granted, you know, they didn't win everything, but like they got to the first round, played a really respectable, you know, regular season, a really respectable playoff series. That's going to gain them more attention from, you know, outlets like The Ringer to, you know, national televised games and things like that. And granted, I think The Ringer did awesome last year with the Magic. There was like, seemed like every other week.
there was a couple of blips.
There was a couple of blips, and that's okay. But like, you know, Bill and Rusilla would like talk. It wouldn't be surprising to have them be a small, you know, segment on the show. Like, oh, we got to talk about, you know, the Magic for a second. They've been on a little bit of a run here or something like that. And
there was
I think
one game
we're going to continue to see that.
There was one game against New Orleans. We were like going to tape Bill like after the games that night or whatever, and he was watching the Magic Pelicans game, and it was like I think it was like the game when Isaac just went nuts and we won the game. And Pablo looked great, and he was literally just like, "Dude, I need to have you on the show like after this game is over." And I was like, "Oh, this is it then. Like, we've kind of made it. Like, you know, if that's." And then he starts talking about you guys can get the 2 seed, and we're like, "Oh man, like we have really kind of hit the mainstream, which is great." So I love that. I embrace it, and the cool thing too was, you know, like, the first 2 games, obviously, of the playoff series were really rough for, I think, all Magic fans. It was not fun. You know, we got our asses kicked pretty badly. Yeah. And I was like kind of quietly like, we're going to be fine for a lot of reasons, one of which I didn't really fully trust Cleveland. But I'm also like, I don't know, like we were kind of in both these games, even though they were really sloppy. And we had arguably like the 2 worst offensive performances in the history of the playoffs. So like it could only go up from here. And then it was just, you know, obviously losing game 7 sucks, but turning that thing around, like if we had gotten swept, I think there'd be a lot of different conversations this offseason about like what this Magic team is. But the fact that they did come back and they were up 20 in a game 7. You know, I think that does help their perception of like, oh, they didn't just get run over in the playoffs. They actually fought back, forced a game 7, and that was maybe the most entertaining series of the first round.
I was at game 6. I flew home for a wedding. It just so happened to be like the day in between the wedding rehearsal and the wedding itself was the Magic game 6 game. So I got to go, and it was one of the best Magic games I've ever been to, hands down. And one of the best games I've ever been to in general. And that's with me going to Golden State Warriors games, almost every season for the last 10 years since I live in the Bay. I've seen Steph go off for 50 and stuff like that, and the old Oracle. And that was so fun, so special. And like, they've definitely accomplished and overachieved every goal that they set for themselves last year, or at least that I set for them. And, they say they're not satisfied, and I love that answer from them. And, again, they're so young. It's crazy. It's crazy to think that we're going to be able to enjoy this team as long as Suggs doesn't get a max contract, because then Paula will get a max contract and things will get really, really complicated. But Suggs is not getting a max contract. But you know what I'm saying? Like, unless something really weird happens, like, the core of this team is going to be together for a good amount of more years, and we should be like a playoff team, for the foreseeable future, which is going to be really fun. And then, hopefully in another couple of years, like true contenders. Not next year. It's probably not going to happen. I wouldn't be surprised, like you, if they made it the Eastern Conference Finals. That's not my expectation by any means, but like, I wouldn't be shocked if it somehow worked out that way. We just saw the Pacers make it that way, and that team is, I'm going to be nice. I'm not going to talk too much about them right now. Good team. Obviously they made the playoffs, but like, major flaws on that team too.
Totally.
Where I think the Magic have rounded some of our big flaws out to an extent, with just like adding a guy who's missed like 20 games in the last 6 seasons total with Caldwell-Pope, which is a huge upgrade with health. And we would expect Franz to take a step forward and find a middle ground with his shooting again next year. Like, I don't expect him to be a 40% shooter, but can he get back to that like 36% from 3? Like, that would do wonders. One of these younger guys with Anthony Black, Jet Howard, or De Silva like clicks and becomes a really nice contributor, like, great, another good thing there. So it's like, we just have a lot of things to be really excited about. As fans, we're going to have a good team on the floor next year. As people that work in media and enjoy listening to media, like, we're going to get the Magic team, we're going to get talked about a lot more. They're going to have more national televised games. It won't be enough, but we'll have more. So I'm just really looking forward to it, man. Steve, we've been talking for an hour, so I think this is probably a good space to wrap it up, but I really appreciate you coming on the show. It's been a minute since we've done this. I think we had you on pretty early on in last season. I'm sure we'll touch base again soon. I'm sure we'll get you on this show when it gets a little bit closer to the season time, or maybe when season's actually in play again. But I just appreciate it. Thank you for all the work that you do at the Ringer and your guys' coverage. Tell them to cover the Magic more. Like, if you have any influence, like, Bill, we need a 20-minute segment once a week. Like, something like that would be great, or a dedicated show just for the Magic. If you can pull that weight, like, let us know. We'll help you work on the details with that too, or something like that. But appreciate it, Steve. If you want, go ahead and plug where people can find you on Twitter. And
Yeah, I'm at Ceruti, not Sir Rudy, like a Knight of the Round Table, like some people think, Ceruti. Obviously Bill's pod, Ryan's pod, popping up here and there. I'm doing a lot of soccer actually recently. I'm a big soccer guy, so the Euros and the Copa have been going on, so we've been doing a lot of pods for the Ringer Soccer Show, which has been fun. So
that's awesome.
So yeah, as always, I appreciate you having me on. It's always good to talk Magic. I know it's like it's cool because I like being the guy who, like, non-Magic fans will be like, hey, like, what's this, or who's this guy, or what do you think about this? But I don't really, other than like my text thread with Kevin Clark, I don't really get too many like one-on-one Magic conversations that are going on. So this is good. It's always good to pop on.
I love it. Yeah, anytime, man. If you ever want to nerd out and talk Magic, hit me up. But obviously, I'll probably hit you up as well. So,
yeah,
Magic fans, thanks for tuning in to the show. You'll hear me again in 2 weeks with the current off-season schedule of the show, where my show is alternating every other week with Al and Anthony, the flagship Orlando Magic HQ show. So I'll talk to you soon. Until then, let's go Magic. Peace.